They're mad. Everybody's mad now. The question is, what are they going to do about it? If anything. Good morning to you. Good Wednesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. I hope you'll check those out as well. Lightning 3, Penguins 2 in overtime. Do try to at least act stunned that they blew a 2-0 lead. It was the 8th time in a quarter of a season that they'd blown a 2-goal lead. Do you have any concept of how difficult that is to do? Do you have any frame of reference in which to place that? It's so awful. In fact, it was so awful that it actually seemed to anger everyone involved. This was Marcus Pettersson after the game.
I think it's tough to say. They're a good team. They create scoring chances. I don't know. It just feels like the same crap all over again. You know, like it's frustrating. That's all I can say.
The same crap, you heard the man say. The same crap. One of the most mild-mannered, soft-spoken guys in that room. The same crap. 20 seconds later, for the first time probably in Pettersson's life, he actually cut off the interview session, said, I don't have anything else to say. Which, by the way, was something very similar to what he spoke to me over the weekend in Columbus. Just said, I'm sorry, I know you're asking the questions, I just don't have the answers. And then there's Mike Sullivan, whose post-game press conferences can last as long as 15 minutes, even longer, which is really long in professional sports. This one didn't make it to 1 minute. And part of the reason for that is he was asked afterward why these blown leads keep happening.
Because we have to compete harder. We need more guys to compete harder and pay more attention to detail, and we need to take more pride in playing defense.
You know that alternate Calgary logo that has the flames coming out of the horse's nostrils or whatever that is? That was Sullivan sitting there at that desk. That was Sullivan. I can't even begin to imagine how he was before entering that room. And yet, nothing changes other than getting mad, which is not a change, which does not do anything tangibly to improve the product. If your only answer, whether it's at the player level or at the coach level, is that we've got to try harder, then you're not trying hard enough. Because it's not Pettersson who needs to try harder. Dude gives his all. I think we can all agree on that. It's not a specific handful of these guys who need to try harder, or for that matter, just to be better. But there are some, and they don't leave the lineup. Or if they're in a certain spot in the lineup, they don't leave that spot. This stuff never changes. Dear God, I have tried to make a habit of not breaking down 3-on-3 goals in one direction or the other, because it's a different, crazily different version of ice hockey. But if you look at Tampa's winner, if you look at the way the Lightning moved through the neutral zone and the way Matt Grzelcyk just backed off and didn't compete for a 50-50 puck right at center red when he at least had an opportunity to slow them down or disrupt them somewhat, which is kind of what you got to do at 3-on-3, you find an individual, you find someone to mark, and you stick on them. You go at them. It's not conventional, this is my spot on the rink kind of defending. And what he did is what he always does, whether it's 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, whatever it is, he finds a place and he stands there. So he backs all the way off, makes it back to the blue paint, for crying out loud, or just a little bit off to the left. Tristan Jarry, who had an otherwise at least a decent game to a certain extent, meaning a certain point on the clock, decided that was a fine time to go for a swim, which he did, about 1.5 miles off to his right. It's impossible to know why he would have done such a thing. But whatever it was, between Jari going for the swim and Grizzly just standing there, Point was able to dump the puck into a completely vacated net. You want to rip the players, you want to rip Jari, you want to rip Grizzly, whatever it is, you can do that. I just did it. But who's putting Grizzly out there 3-on-3? Who sees any merits to this player overall, let alone at 3-on-3? What's the change that's coming? This situation demands change. And the only response in this category here is to scratch Ryan Graves for a couple games. Graves, you could argue, and this is the best of being a badly performing lot, but he was the Penguins' most consistent defenseman through the first quarter of the schedule. He didn't have a great night in Columbus. He should have been more physical in front of the net. He was scratched. I thought that was to send a message. And he was scratched again because, I don't know, they pulled out a shootout against the Sharks after blowing a 3-goal lead to San Jose. You can't act, if you're Sullivan, or for that matter, if you're Kyle Dubas, you can't act as if this is all business as usual. You can't watch Jesse Puljujärvi flying all over the bleeping rink, getting everything done. Did you see what he did on his goal? He hits the dude. He steals the puck. He turns around, gets it to the point, goes back to the net. Pettersson finds him rushing there. Smooth deflection. And he's just going to keep getting his dozen minutes a game. And no special teams time. No 3-on-3 time. And yet when it's all done, everybody's mad. Give me a break. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Jeff, who asks, DK, please help me understand Drew O'Connor's place in this franchise. If you consider these to be the closing days of the Sid, Gino, and Tanger era, and that'll soon lead to, let's call it the McGroarty, Pickering, and Blomqvist era, then DOC seems kind of in between those. Does that make him an important link between the two eras, or is he someone to trade away for futures? I would like to take your question, Jeff, from just the question standpoint. Okay? Meaning not what does he mean in terms of how does he fit into some roster a year or two from now. I'm talking about where does he fit in right freaking now. When I see DOC out there and I see him flying the way he was last night, I see him first to the puck, I see him doing good things with the puck, I see him creating for his line mates, and I see him feeding off Jesse Puljujärvi and vice versa, by the way, and occasionally Sam Poulin's been a good fit there too. I think to myself, that's the present and the future. I mean, these are not older players. We're talking about mid-20s here. When you do I don't know, there's all kinds of different perceptions of what constitutes a rebuild or a tear down. And I think in Pittsburgh, we're all guilty of thinking that that's always the Pirates. No, this is a salary cap league. That means there's a ceiling and a floor. And the range between those two is $20 million. So you can never, blow it all to pieces. You're going to need some hockey players in there. The part that confuses me, and has, to be honest with you, ever since DOC's arrival, is that he'll show you that he can do top six things. He'll show you that he can contribute offensively, that he can produce points in addition to, winning his forechecks and all the other stuff. that you like to see out of him. But he's been cast by Mike Sullivan. He is in a place that I don't think he can get out of with this head coach. Now, I say that, and I want to make sure that I point out that he's also had his time in top six roles, notably when Jake Gensel was traded and he went all the way to the top line. But guess what? He was really good. Remember? He was really good at that. But he comes into this camp, and it's determined clearly before the first bucket of pucks had been emptied onto the ice in Cranberry that Anthony Beauvillier was going to be that guy. Now, did Sid have some say in that or whatever? I don't know. I don't want to get into any kind of potential melodrama, but DOC was there. And DOC with Sid and Brian Rust is a better line than the version with Beauvillier on it. I could not be convinced otherwise. And it would contribute to the franchise's future. So win-win, right? No. DOC couldn't fit there. He couldn't fit on the second line because Michael Bunting and Gino had a couple of nice games together near the end of last season. And there he was, again, cast in a third line role. I have seen this happen with other players under Sullivan, and I've always been uncomfortable about it. If a player shows you who he is, and that player seems to just kind of entrench themselves into that role, that's one thing. But if a player shows you who he is and then shows you that he's getting better, that he's advancing, that he's progressing, then he's Brian Rust. Then you adjust on the fly to having Rust on your roster, and you put him in his appropriate place. You don't, for example, watch Sam Lafferty score the first couple goals of his NHL career and then remind everybody that he's just a plugger. You try instead to bring the very most out of him. Guys, I'm like Pedersen today. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to think about this at the moment. And to be honest with you, in a weird kind of way, the fact that the Penguins played as well as they did for, what was that, 2 periods and change last night and had taken control of that game and were defending diligently and forechecking and got a couple of pucks past one of the best goalies in the world, all that does is confuse things. And man, all this franchise needs right now is actual clarity. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. Going to do another one of these tomorrow.